Rabbanit Shira.
Shalom, Rabbanit Hamutal.
I have a friend who has a very interesting book. It has 365 different pages. And
For each day?
For each day. And it tells you something special about you according to the date and the exact time of the day that you were born in. So
but if it's a book that they print out and they publish so everyone can read it, so how come it's different from each person?
So it means that you and everyone else who were born on the same date has things in common.
Wow.
And it's these kind of things that you can't really argue with. It tells you, oh, you have wonderful intuition. And then you're like, yes, I do. I have wonderful intuition. Or it tells you, you like your music to, I don't know, to be part of your mood. These kind of things that you can't really say.
Very general.
Yes.
Very positive.
But for some reason, it makes you feel really good about yourself. And,
sounds great.
Yeah, and when I saw her and she told me what date were you born in, whatever, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. And then I'm like, is it really allowed to think about dates and stuff that were...
To start analyzing exactly what is the date of the hour of the day that I was born, what does it mean to my life or
and
to my personality?
Everything is very mystical in this book, and she loves it. And then I was like thinking about it. And this week when we're learning the 7th chapter of Sanhedrin, we're speaking about different averot that cause people to get stoned, skila. And one of them is actually the idea of witchcrafting and all these para-natural things, right?
Okay, so we're all regular to think about all this witchcrafting as muggles.
Right.
We tend to think about it as a good thing, as a Harry Potter kind of a world.
Yes.
But the Gemara here comes and tells us this is all part of witchcrafting that is part of Avodah Zarah. It's not witchcrafting in fantasy book.
Right.
It's witchcrafting that you're doing in order or in some sort of a motivation in order to worship idols and to create some sort of a connection to the other world and to do things that Judaism and Torah doesn't let.
So even if you want to understand the future or predict something or have some kind of signs to tell you what to do, the Torah tells us don't do it. Okay, so we're in Daf Samechei and all the Dapim later. The Mishnah says, Baal ov pitom, medaber mishichyo v'yid'oni, medaber im hamet, kol elu b'skila. Meaning, if you're trying to have some kind of connection with the dead, some people are said to have gone to cemeteries and sleep there. And
to starve yourself and to sleep at the cemetery in order to be able to connect to the dead.
Yes, and doing things with animals and trying to
and really, the bone of the chicken.
I know, and predict the future. And it talks about Shaul, right? Because he's one of the main examples of people who tried to speak with the dead.
Who spoke to Shmuel. I think that whoever lost someone that is close to him can identify with the feeling that you would want to. Connect. I would want to talk to someone. I would want to have just one last conversation, one last question, one last comment that I can say. And the Torah is telling us all of this thing, researching to the past and talking to the dead, or trying to figure out the future, but not living in the present. All of that is part of Avodah Zarah, and this is something that the punishment for it is stoning, is skila.
And the interesting thing is, in Daf Samechei Amud Bet, is that the Gemara is saying there are powers in our world, and
we don't deny it.
Exactly, we're not
possibility.
Saying it doesn't exist. We are saying yes, it does exist, and the most amazing story of the Amoraim. Okay, and Rava is saying if the tzaddikim want to, they can create a world.
They can create. They have the option to use those powers in order to connect with HaKadosh Baruch Hu to create the world.
And Rava himself created this kind of, I don't know how to describe it,
body, a person without a neshama.
Without a neshama,
what we call a golem.
Yeah,
exactly.
and he looked like a regular person. And then he went and sat in front of Rabbi Zera. And Rabbi Zera saw that something was off. This creature did not speak. And Rabbi Zera understands and he says, Lo hava kamehaderle. He did not respond. This golem, this creature, Amar le min chavrayat. You're part of this group, this inhuman creatures. Hadar le'afaracha. Go back to the
earth.
Yeah, and he does. And there's a different story about Rav Chanina and Rav Oshia that every Friday afternoon they would learn Sefer Yetzirah, which is Zohar, Kabbalah, and they created a calf to eat. Like these supernatural stories. And the Gemara is saying, we're not saying they didn't have the power to. We're saying don't use
We're saying
powers.
The power exists. There are some people that maybe have the ability or the power to use those powers, But we're telling you, don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it because we don't want you to worship other idols. We don't want you to work avodah zarah. And I think that in the more deeper level, I think what it's telling us, don't indulge into the past. Don't try to figure out the future. Stay in the present.
And I think when you read the stories at the beginning, you're like, okay, this is not part of my life. It has nothing to do with our lives today.
But it sounds like very out there.
Yeah, very Harry Potter kind of thing. But then when you go forward and you see these kind of signs that that Chachamim are talking about, is about getting up in the morning and saying, okay, if I get a green light, it's a good sign.
It means that I'm going to have a good day.
Yes, if everything's going to work out properly, that's a sign. And that, I think people do.
I think it's very natural to look around you, to look at your environment, and to look for signs that everything is going to be good, especially in times where everything is so hard and metultal, everything is so imbalanced.
Yeah.
So to look around you and to say, I'm going to have a good day, everything is going to be okay, to have some sort of anchor to say everything is going to be fine, I think that's something very natural to do. And that's why the Gemara is warning us about those things. And also it goes down to halacha, of course, in the Rambam in Hilchot Avodah Zarah, in the 6th chapter, Haoseh ov o idoni birtzono bezadon. So the criteria is that you're doing it because you want to.
On purpose.
And you're doing it on purpose. It's not something that just
happens.
Harry Potter is just angry and he's blowing up his aunt just because it happens because he's angry.
Right.
No, something that you're doing on purpose.
Intentionally. Right.
Exactly, intentionally. Chayav karet. ואם היו שם עדים והתראה, נסכל. So if he had witnesses and they're warning him, so he's getting the punishment from the Beit Din of stoning. If it's shogeg, so you just have to bring a korban. And then the Rambam throughout the perek and the chapter after it is just going around and asking, how do you ma'ale ba'ov? What does it mean to do as the onim? And he's talking about the different minhagim or the different things that they used to do and warning us about it. But at the end of the chapter, he's also saying, you should notice that there are things that are similar, but it doesn't mean that it's avodah zarah. The fact that we're doing stuff that are similar to what the custom of idol worshiping doesn't mean that it's the same, because the tension is different and the custom is different. And he brings as an example bowing down. So for avodah zarah, you would bow down, and then today, if you would go to Har HaBayit, for example, to where Beit HaMikdash used to be, or in the times of the Rambam, he's talking specifically about going to Beit HaMikdash, not that he had a Beit HaMikdash, but the Rambam is writing in the ideal world where we go to Beit HaMikdash. So he's saying the fact that we are bowing, we're not bowing in the same way as idol worshipping, we're bowing with all of our body. Hamutal here is going up to Temple
Mount.
Har HaBayit, and in Temple Mount, what you do is you lie down
completely
with all of your body, and like you're spreading out your arms and your legs, and you're lying down, and it's not similar to avodah zarah. So the Rambam is bothering to say, notice
there's a difference.
That there's a difference, and even though it might look to you a bit similar, it's not the same.
The second example that appears here is putting a stone on someone's grave, matzeva, and it says that we're not supposed to do that, right?
But the Rambam is saying which matzeva is not allowed. Matzeva she'asra Torah היא בניין שיהיו הכל מתקבצים אצלה, meaning that it's some sort of a place that everyone is coming to gather to worship in a way.
So Rav Steinsaltz in his commentary down below says, you're right, Rambam, but what we do today, we put stones in cemeteries and some things to remember by, and it's not the same. כתבו האחרונים שאין איסור בהקמת מצבת זיכרון לנופלים במערכות ישראל. If we have, chas v'chalila, and we have, unfortunately, soldiers who died, we're allowed to put matzeva for them, and it's not part of the prohibition. And he quotes Mishpatei Uziel, Rav Uziel, who was a chief rabbi, and he says there's no problem with it. So some things that look like they're forbidden, they're not, and it's all about the intention and the way that you're doing it and the details. So we understand people wanting connection with the dead, and it has to be done properly. We don't want any connection with the dead, but we can appreciate them. We can come and...
We can have memories.
Exactly.
I light a candle. The way that I do it, I light a neshama candle.
Yeah, we can bow in a certain way, but we have to be very careful not to get into this mystical world of saying our connection in Hashem, chas v'chalila, is not enough, that we have to find different ways, mystical ways to connect. Wow.
So בעזרת השם, may we have lots of בשורות טובות.
אמן.
ישועות ונחמות.
שבוע טוב.
שבוע טוב.